So game one of the James Harden era in Brooklyn is complete. The Nets blow past the Orlando Magic. Final in this one was 122 to 115. But in the second half, the Nets really got it going. A lot of turnovers from James and KD. I believe they combined for 15 of the 19 Brooklyn Nets turnovers. Harden had 9 of those. So I'm only bringing it up to say, in the first half, the Nets, they were in the game, but they were trying to figure some things out on the court. I watched that game alongside some playoff football. The highlight will be out shortly with the Nets Magic game. But, you know, second half, you could really see Harden and KD just impose their will and let it be known we're clearly the two best players on the court. And there's some distance between whoever you believe number 3 was on the court during that game. You know, a lot of people are like, yo, it's working. Oh, my God, look at James Harden flowing with Kevin Durant. Well, first off, they're playing the Orlando Magic. The running joke that I've always had, if you follow this platform for a couple years now, you know I have a joke with James Harden against the Orlando Magic. He literally always lights up the Orlando Magic. Go look at some of James Harden's stat lines against the Magic over the last few years. He literally always lights them up. Number 2, I never had any concerns of Kevin Durant and James Harden being a dynamic duo. That's not what's present on this roster. They have a third All-Star that will be making his way back into their lineup supposedly next week in Kyrie Irving. I believe, and this is my theory, I believe Kevin Durant and another guard at an All-Star level is all that KD needs with some really good rim protection. I believe that's all KD needs to get over the hump in the East and make it to the finals. Now, would he win it? Not 100% sure. But I believe Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving is enough to make it to the NBA Finals. Kevin Durant and James Harden by itself is enough to make it to the NBA Finals. I believe, let's say Kevin Durant was still in Golden State and it was just him and let's use Klay Thompson if he were healthy. I believe that's enough for the Warriors to compete out West with some good interior defense, right? The DeAndre Jordans of the world, the Draymond Greens of the world. I believe that's enough for KD to get it done. I don't believe a KD, Kyrie, Harden threesome is going to work. I was just watching a lot of the games, just seeing how Harden and KD flowed so well off each other. No, I think that's going to work. Newsflash to everybody. James will thrive as a number 2. Let me be clear. James will thrive as a number 2. What was the stat lines? KD had 42. James Harden went for a 28-point triple-double. 14 assists in his debut. A stat line like that is going to always work. I believe that is the perfect place to put James Harden at. A place where he can deliver the basketball to his teammates, get guys involved. That chemistry with him and Jeff Green, that thing just seemed to flow. It felt like they were playing basketball just yesterday, which has been like 7-8 years since these gentlemen played on the court with each other. I was looking at when that trade took place between the Thunder and Houston. Can you believe that's almost a decade old? Since Harden was traded from OKC to the Rockets right before the season start, you know, time flies. I don't know if this thing's going to work when Kyrie gets into the mix. I don't know who's going to hold the ball. James wants the ball as soon as it's inbounded. And I don't believe Kyrie wants to come off the ball. Kyrie at the 2 screams problems for me. Now, we're going to talk about Kyrie Irving and his role on this team in another video later today, but I don't know how this thing works. It's going to be interesting. It's must-see TV. You got to watch the Nets now. I'm talking about before you probably really wanted to watch the Nets. You got to watch every dribble of the remainder of this season. It's must-see TV now. That's how I feel watching James Harden out there with KD. I didn't think it would be a problem one bit. And you know what's going to work with James? James didn't want to be the late game shot taker and maker. Let's be clear. When he was in Houston with Chris Paul, Chris could make late game shots. Chris is clutch. I love Chris Paul. But number 1, his hammy gave out on him 1 year. And number 2, a couple of those years, the Warriors was throwing Klay Thompson on Chris Paul or bigger guards. So as great as I think Chris Paul is, he's my favorite point guard of all time. At some point, some of these bigger guards are going to start to tax on CP3. There's nobody in the league that can tax on Kevin Durant from a defensive standpoint. Nobody. And with that being said, KD can make any late game shot, and Kyrie actually can as well. Saying James Harden in late game situations is going to be a problem for the Nets, I think is fictional. I believe James Harden is going to flow right into that role late games. Here's the new flash, everybody. James doesn't want to take late game shots. So now you use him as a decoy, right? The real problem when all three of these guys are on the court together is who's going to take the late game shots between KD and Kyrie. But I've seen a lot of splat of who's going to take the late game shots between James, KD, or Kyrie. Ignore Harden in that component. Trust and believe. Harden ain't going to have no problems coming off of the ball in late game scenarios. Minutes 1 through 47, he wants the ball more than anyone else. Minute 48, he don't want it that much. Don't worry about Harden late in games. If that's your problem in Brooklyn, you have no problems. I think minutes 1 through 47 are going to be the difficulties that Nets team faces. Even that, I still think that, that team's, look, they're really good on paper. NBA 2K dream. We will see how it works on the court. I don't believe it'll work. Maybe I'm wrong. We'll see. I don't believe it'll work. And I see a lot of people already saying, because LeBron is the most popular athlete of this generation and he's all coming off a championship and he's got AD next to him and it's the Lakers, everybody's go ahead and matching up the Lakers and the Nets in the finals. Two things. If the Lakers get my Lakers, and y'all know I love my Lakers, if my Lakers find themselves taking on the Clippers, we ain't making the finals. I still believe that, by the way. But I do want to play the Clippers, though. I do want to just get it out of the way and see who's the best. But I don't believe we could beat the Clippers, by the way, even still to this day. But I do believe the Clippers could lose to a lot of other teams out west. Okay. Ignore the Lakers. Ignore the Clippers. The Nets are going to have a time getting out of the East. On paper, they should get out of the East easily. But trust and believe, you can play good to great team defense and give that team some issues. Once you find a way to, you can't stop KD, but hold him to around 30 points on 18 to 22 shots, you've done your job as best you can. And with Kyrie and Harden, because they miss so many shots, you're going to have a chance to beat that team because of the amount of turnovers and missed shots. You're going to have a lot of possessions taking on the Nets. A lot of quick shots, a lot of turnovers, a lot of bad possessions where it's just dribble, 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 dribble. Let me do my thing. All right? So the Milwaukee Bucks of the world, the Miami Heat, those teams, I would say those teams more than some of the younger teams out east, those veteran-led teams will still have great chances at beating the Nets and having good success against them in the postseason. So not too fast on this Nets-Lakers thing. I don't think if you're a Laker fan, you're worried about Brooklyn today. I don't think LeBron's losing sleep over the Nets. If anything, he's still losing sleep over that Claw guy that plays in the same building as him for now. That's who we're worried about. We ain't worried about no damn Nets. If we get to the finals, we believe we're good. The Nets are going to have problems getting out of the East because of the amount of ball-dominant guards they got. Y'all let me know what y'all thought about Harden's first performance in Brooklyn. It was pretty freaking impressive. Turnovers aside, it was damn impressive. I have to admit that. But we're only going to get this for a couple more days. And, Kyrie's back next week. So we will see how it goes. All right, I'm out.